Last week in Paul's annual address, he alluded to the fact that as Episcopalians we are sometimes resistant to change. This should not come as a shock to any of you. Any of you who've heard the joke, how many Episcopalians does it take to change a light bulb? Well, we can't change that light bulb. My grandfather put that in. Because you know that we're resistant to change. But don't feel too bad about that. We're not the only ones. It's our nature to be resistant to change. It's the nature of the universe to be resistant to change. Sir Isaac Newton came up with a law for this. It's his first law of motion, which simply put says an object in motion stays in motion and an object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. So we are, as an organization, as a church, we are moving in a direction, and unless something comes along and knocks us off our course, we're going to keep going in that direction. Because that's the way inertia works. And it's not a problem unique to us. Peter and James and John had this same problem. And this story that we hear from the gospel this morning is taken a bit out of context. So I'd like to tell you what happened just 6 days before this story happens. Jesus is telling the people what it means that he is the Messiah. And he said some things like, the Messiah will be betrayed and put to death and resurrected from the dead. Those aren't things that Peter and James and John and the people of Israel were expecting from the Messiah. They wanted a Messiah who was going to come in like a mighty warrior, a conqueror, to deliver them from the hand of the Romans, and was going to be their new king on earth. That's what they wanted. Not some guy who was going to be betrayed and put to death. That didn't fit with their image of a Messiah. And they weren't willing to change. Peter even went so far as to rebuke Jesus and say, hey, you can't be saying this stuff in front of people. They're going to get the wrong idea. They're not going to realize that you are who you say you are. You're not going to die, so stop with that nonsense. And Jesus, of course, says, get behind me, Satan, for you're putting your mind on earthly things and not heavenly things. So this is what has happened 6 days before. And the next story in Mark's gospel is this mountaintop experience, where Peter and James and John are up there, and suddenly Jesus is transfigured before them. He becomes this immaculately white perception. And there's this idea, there is the splendor and the glory and the power and the majesty of God manifest in Jesus Christ. This is it. And Peter, in typical fashion, blurts the first thing that comes to his mind. It is good for us to be here. We're going to make 3 houses. We're going to make one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. And we're going to stay up here on this mountain for all eternity. And this is going to be our base camp. And this is where we're going to have all things run. And this is where we're going to take our stand against the Romans. Oh, Peter. He still doesn't get it. He's still not ready to make that change. And that's when a cloud comes and overshadows them. And the voice comes from the cloud and says, this is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him. Because Jesus was telling a story that was different from the story they wanted to hear. Jesus was telling a story about love and compassion and forgiveness. And they wanted a conqueror, a deliverer. Jesus was telling a story about sacrificing himself for us. But they didn't want someone to sacrifice themselves. They wanted someone to come and forcibly throw the Romans out of their land. The story that Jesus tells us today is often a story we don't want to hear. It's often a story we're not ready to hear. But that's the story we're given. And so we have this vision of Jesus transfigured on the mountaintop to let us know that, yes, this is the Jesus we have been waiting for. This is the Jesus, the Messiah, the deliverer. He is who we want him to be. But he's just going to do things in a different way. So as we approach the season of Lent, which starts on Wednesday, I want you to take this image of the transfigured Christ with you. To take this image of this dazzling white image of Jesus and remember that as we prepare to hear the story leading up to the betrayal and the crucifixion, that we know that this is all really a story about love. About love for us. About love for all of God's creation. A love so powerful that it goes beyond our understanding. And I want you to take that love with you and let the light of that love shine through you, so you yourselves become that transfigured image of Jesus to all the people you meet. And so when you have a conversation with your family, with your friends, with the cashier at Kroger, whoever it is, will know that the story to that song is true. That they will know we are Christians by our love. Amen.
Let's get them to get on the truck.
Here, boxes, boxes, boxes. Here, boxes, come on.
I think you gotta get tough with them.
Hey, boxes!
Hey!
Get on the truck!
Hey, why don't you try a little psychology?
Hey, I hear they're giving out free ice cream to the first 20 boxes that get on the truck.
Hey, it says here that nothing gets moved unless they get pushed or pulled.
Great! That means we'll have to do the work, just like last time.
Please, come on, you're so angry.
Any boxes
Right
on the
on here.
truck?
Just
Come
out
on.
the